questa finestra importante del nostro congresso. Abbiamo già visto ieri in un panel altrettanto importante un ospite d'onore che ci onora profondamente per essere qui con noi, il primo ministro della Repubblica Cecena di Ичкерия Ahmed Zakaiев, compagno di lotta per la democrazia, per il riconoscimento di una Cecenia libera, democratica, per la libertà dell'Ucraina, per la democrazia in Russia, per la libertà a teatro. Grazie alla libertà che raduna l'intervento
Very nice. At the beginning of my speech, I would like to thank the organizers of this forum, particularly Radicali Italiani, as well as all the members. For more than 26 years now, I have been a direct participant in the military and political process between Russia and Chechnya. The information released by the press departments of the Russian agencies is intended to divert attention from objective facts. The Kremlin ideologists still practice the totalitarian theory that if you repeat a lie 1,000 times, it will become the truth. I prefer Abraham Lincoln's statement that you can fool some of the people all of the time. All of the people, some of the time, but never all of the people, all of the time. The basis of any country must be defined first and foremost by the nature of that country. You have probably heard dozens of versions and origins of the conflict between Russia and Chechnya. Oil reserves and international Islamic terrorism have less than nothing to do with how that conflict arose. I would like to explain what the Russian government is so afraid of. Since the beginning of the Russian-Chechen War on December 11, 1994, every attempt of the world community to become involved in the peaceful solution of the conflict has been halted by the thesis of the territorial integrity of the Russian Federation. Today, when our conflict has generated into a vicious circle, it is extremely important to examine it from the point of view of its legality. Epithets such as self-declared, separatist, rebel, or unrecognized are frequently used to describe the Chechen Republic. They are not based on the historical and legal facts. The sovereign status of the Chechen Republic is as legitimate as was the USSR. In April 1990, during Gorbachev's reforms of the Soviet system, the Supreme Soviet of the USSR adopted two laws of paramount importance for the nations of the Soviet Union. On April 10th of 1990, on the basis of economic relations between the USSR and the Union and the autonomous republics, then on April 26th of 1990, dividing authority between the USSR and Federation subjects, basic more general provisions. This legislation contained a number of articles which radically changed the status of the autonomous republics. They now shared the rights of the Union republics. Both types of republics enjoyed the right to free self-determination of the peoples. On the 27th of November 1990, following the unofficial edict of the Supreme Soviet Council of the USSR, the Supreme Soviet Council of the Chechen English Republic adopted a declaration on state sovereignty. Throughout the life of the USSR, anything to do with the legal status, statehood, and borders of the various ethnic entities within the country was the exclusive prerogative of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR. The reason why I'm going into such details is that you can understand that there was no uprising, no seizing of power by armed separatists. The sovereignty of the Chechen Republic was established by the adoption in the USSR of several new laws in April 1990, and therefore was absolutely legal and legitimate under Soviet law, Russian law, and international law. So by the time of the Soviet Union was dissolved in December 1991, the Chechen Republic had existed for more than a year as a sovereign state, recognized in the legal system of the USSR equal to all the Union republics, Russia, Georgia, Ukraine, Baltic states and others, and was preparing to sign the updated Union Treaty. The equal status of the Chechen Republic was in fact recognized by the government of Russia in 1992 during the official division of the weapons and property of the former Soviet army that were in the Republic of Chechnya. A similar division of the weapons and property of the Soviet army took place between Russia and all other former republics of the USSR. 1992 was a key year for the Chechen Republic because of two more events which took place. The first was the adoption of our constitution, which confirmed the status of the Chechen Republic as a democratic sovereign state. The second was the signing of the federal treaty in Russia, in which the Chechen Republic did not participate. Where did the term Chechnya is part of Russia come from? In October 1993, President Yeltsin ordered troops to fire on the Russian parliament and dissolve the parliament. When President Yeltsin ordered a referendum for a Russian constitution, there was no Russian parliament and no Russian constitution, as the Chechen Republic had a parliament since 1991, which had adopted a constitution in 1992. The Chechen Republic did not participate in the Russian referendum. The Russian constitution contains an article stating that the Russian state is a federal one consisting of subjects which have voluntarily signed the federal treaty. Another article states that the Chechen Republic is a subject of the Russian Federation. The Russian presidency violated all possible legal norms when it included the Chechen Republic as a subject of the Russian Federation in the Russian constitution. In 1994, after 3.5 years of state terrorism, of blackmail, of attempts to undermine the Chechen leadership, which failed to make the Chechen Republic capitulate, Russia unleashed a full-scale military invasion. This war was cynically declared for the establishment of constitutional order, while in fact it was a war which violated all the international law, including the Geneva Convention governing the rules of war. In 1996, the war ended, and all the Russian troops were withdrawn from the Chechen Republic in January 1997, with the active methodological and logistical support of the OSCE, and in accordance with the Chechen Constitution of 1992, Chechnya held presidential and parliamentary elections, officially recognized by the Council of Europe, which sent a large number of observers, and by the Russian Federation. On 12 May 1997, the most important document in the whole history of relations between Russia and Chechnya was signed. The peace treaty laid down the basis principles for relations between the Russian Federation and the Chechen Republic of Ичкерия. The difficult but clear promising process of establishing mutually acceptable interstate relations between Russia and the Chechen Republic was interrupted in 1998. When the Security Council, which was headed by Putin, who was also a director of the FSB, that put a resounding stop to the negotiating process. Our government is often reproached with the accusation that we had the time and opportunity after the end of the first Russia-Chechen war to strengthen and assert our sovereignty. I can state with full authority that we did not in fact have either the time or the opportunity, and that was because the Russian secret services immediately began serious preparation for a second war. They unleashed a harsh wave of terrorist operations against Chechnya, which included explosions, murders and kidnappings, specifically of foreigners and journalists. Many well-known politicians stated publicly that Chechnya had to be brought to such a state that it would beg on its knees to be allowed back into the Russian Federation. After the dissolution of the USSR, supporters of strong central government in Russia were complaining that there was no longer a unifying idea, and therefore that the remnant of the great Russian Empire, the Russian Federation, might crumble. The Kremlin found that idea that was needed. They replaced Marx's idea of combating capitalism with the idea of combating terrorism. The advantage of the new idea was that when it came to the theory and practice of acts of terror, Russia had been the world leader throughout the whole 20th century and on all continents. You will be interested to know that during the first war of the 1994 to 1996, we were branded as bandits, separatists, fascists, all sorts of things, but no Russian politicians dreamed of calling us fundamentalists or Islamic terrorists, let alone international terrorists. The Kremlin already had experience of linking the Chechen issue with international problems. Stalin, for instance, when he tackled the Chechen issue in 1944 by deporting the entire nation to the steppes of Kazakhstan and Siberia, accused the Chechen people of collaborating with the fascist Germans, even though the Nazis never succeeded to occupy Chechnya. Stalin's democratic allies could find this statement understandable at the time. In our time, presenting Chechnya as one of the main breeding grounds for international Islamic terrorism seems conveniently to suit public opinion at home, in Russia, and also in the West. Last several years, Russian liberal Democrats have told us about the negative process which have taken place and are still taking place in Russia. I am deeply convinced that what Putin's regime has done in Russia is the consequences and reflection of things what that happened and continue to happen in Chechnya. Anti-Chechen history by the Kremlin, which enjoys the support of an absolute majority of Russian society, including the Democrats. Shameless lying, lawlessness, and cruel crimes are the tools of Russian policy towards Chechnya. Inflamed by great power propaganda, Russian society readily agreed in the obvious evil means used against the Chechens, and when those began to be used against the Russians themselves, it was already too late to change anything. A campaign of terror against a small nation cannot lead to positive results. The predictable consequences of criminal law unleashed against Chechnya have been a restriction of democratic freedoms, including the abolition of free speech, of freedom for private business activity, and of freedom for minority religions, politically motivated criminal prosecutions, harassment of civil rights organizations, violation of citizens' electoral rights, ever strengthening fascism and gross interference in the internal affairs of neighboring states. These are all natural results of the criminal anti-Chechen war, which continues in 28 years now. Russia refused to recognize the independence of the Chechen Republic, and its subsequent unleashing of a war created false expectations among many people regarding the possible resolution of post-Soviet conflicts. Georgia, Moldova, and their friends wanted to see Russia subjugate Chechnya as soon as possible, imagining that after this, their own territorial integrity will be restored. Carpet bombing of villages and towns, violation of every term of military engagement, ethnic cleansings, and genocide committed during the two anti-Chechen war were all deemed Russia's internal affairs. Putin was confident that the present Western leaders will never change their publicly stated attitude towards Russia, no matter what he does. The Russian regime has in present form largely because of the encouragement Russia has received from the Western states in its barbaric war against Chechnya, one of the most bloody and violent conflicts in Europe since the Second World War. 300,000 civilians, including more than 40,000 children, have been killed in Chechnya. I'm deeply convinced that the economic interests of certain countries and the political interests of certain politicians should not be more important than the fate of all nations. I am also absolutely sure that the lack of adequate reaction of the Western world to the Chechen tragedy is the main reason why Russia committed military aggression against Georgia, Ukraine. I really pleased that the world has realized that the policy of appeasement cannot be continued and strongly condemned the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Chechens have been involved in this war on the side of the Ukrainians since 2014. Putin, during Russia's large-scale invasion of Ukraine, drew the so-called Kadyrovs into the ranks of the Russian occupiers. This decision was made with the aim of bringing hate between Chechens and Ukrainians. But thanks to the wisdom of the Ukrainian people and the correct actions of the Chechen Republic Ичкерия government in exile, Putin failed to achieve this goal. On February 26th of Brussels hosted meeting of the State Committee for the deoccupation of the Chechen Republic Ичкерия, the head of which I am, as the head of the Chechen Republic Ичкерия government in the exile. And this meeting, it was decided to form volunteer detachments from among the Chechens in Europe to participate in the war on the side of the Ukrainians. On the same day, we announced this decision through the media. I also turned to President Zelensky about the need to conclude an agreement on military cooperation between the parties, so that the participation of Chechens in an armed conflict does not contradict the Geneva Convention of 1949 and the additional protocol of December 7 of 1978, protection of persons participating in hostilities, that the person does not fall under the article mercenaries of the Geneva Convention. On May 28, in the city of Kyiv, an agreement of mutual assistance and support was signed between the military departments of Ukraine and the Chechen Republic Ичкерия. Since that time, the formation of separate special purpose brigade as part of the foreign legion of Ukraine has been going on. 2 battalions have been there since 2014. 2 battalions were formed after this sign of the interdepartmental agreement, and as present, the 3rd battalion is being recruited. Now I would like to digress slightly from the main topic and quite something the first president of the Chechen Republic Ичкерия, Johar Dudayev, said in 1995. When the sun of freedom rises in Ukraine, the end of the Russian Empire will come. In fact, today, in connection with the war in Ukraine, the world is being reorganized. The Ukraine has become the leader of the free world. I am sure that today, my people, as never before in their history, are close to restoring their statehood. And I guarantee that with the help of the Almighty, our government abroad will not miss this opportunity. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you very much.